A beautiful excuse. No matter how beautiful the destination, it is merely an excuse for a journey. The illusory end is not where the fruit of it lies, as every step towards the imagined end is an end in itself. It is the little flower by the side of the path, the majestic sight of the snow-capped peak hopelessly high, the faraway bird song which is heard deep in the heart, and the innocent smile of the nameless child passing by. It is the seeing of the ever-present love of the omnipresent mother, awakened by her endless, overwhelming beauty, which makes the destination worth striving for, with weary knees and eyes tearing with joy. But to see her in her regal grandeur, resting on her lofty, august throne, and to lose yourself in fervent raptures, I beseech you, my friend, go alone, lest your companions keep you from the wonders in plain sight, with the baggage they have carried from the worlds you have left behind. For if you bare your heart and dare go solo, you'll drink the nectar of solitude that feeds the soul, while the safety and the comfort of being one out of many will only add more manure to the ego mind. But if you really must, at most take two, nay one, whose hearts and bags are light as thine, and whose love and light will brighten your shine. Walk forth with trust and kindness. Fellowship you'll find no end, for in every random stranger, you'll learn to find a friend. You'll learn, you'll return with tales of many travels, much more than of your own. And if you walk slow and look close and let your eyes be ears, you'll hear even more. For each face will tell a tale, and every smile will sing a song, as their twinkling eyes speak aloud. And when you have grown, when you ha- and when you have grown wise and old, let your young cherish the stories you have told, and one day pick a beautiful excuse to set forth on their own grand journey.
Wow.
A beautiful excuse.
Hello and welcome to the Learning Luminaries podcast, the episode where every week I meet with an inspiring, bright soul who is leaning into the power of their own inner wisdom in order to create a more beautiful, unified, harmonious world by facing the shadow and embracing it with compassion. My guest today is Ra Natjer, who is an ordained Buddhist monk who left his lofty tech job, rediscovering his clairvoyance and his gifts as a healer that he's had since childhood. And I am so grateful and ready for this conversation. We are about to take a deep dive into how to alchemize the soul, really apply spiritual journey to your life and what it means when you're in that place of hopelessness and how to transform that into power. So let's dive in. Hello and welcome.
Thank you so much for the beautiful introduction. And thank you for allowing me to read my poem. This is what I wrote in 2016 after hiking up in the Himalayas for weeks. And this only happened after I had this, for months, I had this calling in my heart to be alone in the mountains. I was so tired of society for some reason. I just wanted solitude in my heart, and the mountains were calling me. So I went there and I had this beautiful exploration, this adventure in the mountains alone. And after that, this poem just flowed out of me. And thank you for allowing me to read it out to your audience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's an incredible story and a beautiful, beautiful poem. It moved me so much and it was so relevant to the way that I have been feeling. And so it just really was very evocative. It was so good. Thank you for sharing it with us. So that is like the peak of that has to be at least one of the climaxes of this story. We have to give some exposition first. So tell
Yeah.
me a little bit more about where you're from and when your spiritual awakening kind of started.
Yeah. I am from, I was born in a little coastal village in south of India. It's near Mangalore. Um, and this little village revolved around a temple. And in this little village, everything began with God and ended with God, because we would wake up with the drums in the morning, where they would wake up the deity in the temple that was right in front of our house. And it was huge. And,
What deity
we,
was it?
well, there are three main deities, but, they are based on Shiva and Vishnu.
Okay.
And, you know, Ugra Narasimha is the actual name of the deity. It's the lion form of Vishnu, where in one of the 10 avatars, he has the head of a lion and the body of a human being. And this is where my grandma, my grandpa all resided. Um, and my grandpa built this house with his own hands, and my awakening happened here one evening when I was about 5 years old. Everyone had fallen asleep, and I somehow woke up and I felt called to come to the front of the house. And there's this beautiful porch, windows that were huge, and through that I could see the entire temple. And at that time, for me, that temple represented God. Right? And I just stood there, and something in me started remembering my connection with God so strongly, my higher self so strongly, the reason I'm here so strongly. I had flashes of my past life, and I remembered why I incarnated on this earth. Before my birth, my mother actually prayed for years to have a baby. She had a miscarriage before that, and she had lost a baby. And she was really afraid that she would lose this one too. So she did everything she could. She went to every temple she could and prayed to God. And when she was pregnant, the doctor said there would be possible complications. So she made the biggest deal that she could with God. And she said, if a healthy baby is born, I don't want to hold on to this child as my child. I want to give this child to God, and I want a child who spreads the light of spirituality. So even my teacher much later told me I was invited to this earth in this way. And that's why I
Mhm.
chose that womb. So at 5 years old, I remembered why I was here. And I started crying to Divine Mother. This is how I addressed God. And I still do sometimes, like in the poem you've heard. This is how I started crying to Divine Mother, saying, I want to do what I'm here to do. I want to follow my higher purpose. I don't want to waste another lifetime. I remembered lifetimes when I had come for this purpose and then forgot everything all about it and wasted my life in minutia. But this time I said, no, I want to start right now. I was 5 years old, a toddler, and I was like, I want to start right now. Um, and this is how my first awakening remembrance started.
Wow, that is a powerful story.
Mhm.
Do you still feel like when you connect with God, are you still very connected to like the lion-headed incarnation that you grew up with?
I have come across so many forms of God, since my childhood because I was raised as a Hindu, and then I explored so many different paths, including Christianity, Sufism, and various different mystical sides
Mhm.
of them as well, right? So I don't connect with God through a form anymore. The forms are important in the beginning because they are
Mhm.
very accessible. They
They're
are,
like archetypes for us to
yes,
understand them. They're like characters.
yes, yes. And it's the personalization of an aspect of divinity that makes it very easy for a person to relate to. Otherwise, it's just so abstract. But the more I got into spirituality, I saw that each of these forms, each of these deities are one aspect of divinity. But when you really want to understand the deeper truth behind all of this, you are mature enough at that point to go into seeing the fullness of it all beyond names, beyond forms, beyond all these stories. And that is what you find within you, not anywhere outside. This is the divinity that is inside.
Was there a moment that you felt like that divinity awoke and that or was there like a moment before and no because you were really young when it happened? Wait, did you lose it, I guess, is the question.
I
Yeah.
definitely forgot all about it, especially in my teenagers. See, after this first awakening, I had so many more mystical experiences because I was raised by spiritual parents. My father was a healer who helped about 1 million people in India,
How?
right?
What did he
He,
do?
he re um, he revived a healing path called Amrit Chikitsa. Um,
Whoa.
if you've heard of Shirdi Sai Baba, he's a famous saint, also from India. He started coming to him and teaching him in his dreams, in his visions, started teaching him a way of energy healing that then he developed more and more. And through that, he helped about 1 million people. So for me, growing up, this was the normal, right?
Yeah.
Seeing people get healed, talking about energy, aura, and all supernatural stuff. And I started being clairvoyant very naturally in my childhood. And I remember telling my mother when I assumed everybody else could see this, the auras, the light beings. This was when my father was doing a treatment for somebody, and he worked with ascended masters. And one of these ascended masters came there to help, and they were just present there, and I saw their light body, and I asked my mother something about it. Hey mom, do you see this teacher who has come, this guru who has come? um, Using the Indian word for it, the word now is used very vastly differently, but it has a
Mhm.
pure meaning. So my mother was like, no, do you see him? Wow. Like, tell me, what do you see? And my father has been able to see that because he was a practitioner of that. So because I was able to express it in that way, in a way, um, this comes out of a pain, what I'm saying, that I've had so many students who had clairvoyant abilities awakening to them, and they were, you know, judged for it. They were called weird or insane for it. But
Mhm.
fortunately, because I grew up in that environment to parents who really understood me, I was celebrated. My father then encouraged me to develop that ability so much, and he mentored me. Every day, hundreds of new people would come to get healed,
Wow.
and he would scan their auras, their energies, and I would be standing there next to him, and he would ask me, I I see something wrong. So you tell me what it is. And
Mm.
I would scan them and I would notice what it was in their chakras, in their energy body, and I would tell my father. I grew so good at it that I could tell people what was their exact blood sugar level, their creatine level, all these things that they confirmed. And I could tell what organ was affected and what should be done with it. I would get all these intuitions.
Wow. And that was like tested as well.
Yeah, yeah. They
Wow.
would take text.
Incredible.
My dad was very scientific about this, so he would also ask them to get diagnosis from regular doctors and all that. Um, that's what I used to do. I should say I'm no longer a healer. I've stopped putting energy into healing, even though I was a healer most of my life.
Mm.
All my time and energy now goes into being a spiritual awakening mentor. It's a
What's the
conscious
difference?
decision. The difference is that with healing, the energy was more focused on healing the body.
Yeah. Mm.
And even though it was very spiritual to do that, it was magical to do that, it was very helpful for people. What I saw is that there is something much deeper that if you heal that, everything else is becomes whole, right?
So do you see that as like the energy body or the spiritual body, or what is the like where is that to be healed from? Does that make sense?
The Yeah, so what I'm talking about is healing the sense of separation.
Okay.
The sense of being tied to this little human body and believing that we are surviving through this 3D reality and not seeing that we are actually limitless beings of spirit that are so much more than our ego mind can imagine.
Mm.
So if we heal that sense of separation, which is what is called enlightenment or awakening that is integrated, that is what can make the biggest change in somebody's life.
What do you feel like are the noticeable changes from like how is your life different living with this mindset?
Hmm. Oh my God. Um, it's the most beautiful experience when you first realize it.
Mm.
When you first have an awakening, which is known as Satori or Samadhi, which is experiencing, realizing that you are, in fact, one with all that is. You are, in fact, not this human body. You are, in fact, so much beyond anything that you've heard of, you've seen, you've understood with this mind. And it's so vast that words cannot contain that. It's
Yeah.
so, it's like for me when the first experience when I had this, like in a really deep way, I've had glimpses before that. The first experience was 2014 or 15. For 3.5 hours, I was in a state of complete bliss.
Mm.
And in that place, the body was there, but it was just so small that I couldn't even, there were no words, there were no thoughts, and
What
everything
brought
was
you
just light.
in?
Sorry.
How did you get into this state?
I was in the presence of my teacher,
Mm.
whom I had sought for about 10 years. I was looking for a teacher really hard, an enlightened teacher. I had high standards because, before this, I read a book called Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahamsa Yogananda. It's an amazing, beautiful book. And there I understood how important it is to have a teacher if you ever hope to get enlightened. It's important to have an enlightened teacher who has done that before, not somebody who knows all this stuff from, scriptures, who is somebody of an expert uh, in knowledge, but somebody who
Yeah.
has actually done it. So on this long search, I got so disappointed that I gave up the search and said, I'm just going to follow my heart, because I was seeing how life was guiding me. And that is exactly when I found my teacher, when I surrendered. And, you know, at that time, I was an actor, I was a photographer.
What?
Um, yeah, yeah.
Okay, wait. Okay, now we have to get into the life story because who, where have you been? What have you done? Okay, the so you grew up outside of this temple where you had beautiful training as a healer guided by your family. And then what? Like, where do you go from there? How do you get from there to actor and deep mountains and now here?
Yeah, yeah. My life has been fascinating. I'm so grateful for that. Um, after, you know, after like when I was about let's say 8-ish, my parents moved to Bangalore. It's a bigger city. And my father, he was earlier before that, he was also running a bank. He was doing healing only on Sundays. And every Sunday in our village, there would be, and this was a different village. So this is the father's side. My mother's side was this temple village. My father's side was a different village, which was in the mountains. And in this little village, on every Sunday, a huge line would form to of people hearing about this healer and coming to get healed, right? So this is when I started developing all this. But in Bangalore, when we were actually starting a thing full time, my father went into healing full time, and that's when I started seeing things and getting in touch with these enlightened teachers. But what happened, even with all these beautiful experiences in my teenagers, I completely rebelled against all that, right?
Mm.
I was a gamer. I was playing as much as I could. Counter Strike, this game where you had two teams competing against each other. I had a team, we won a championship, and I was about to go pro and travel to the north of a country for this huge championship when my parents put their foot down and said, no, this is enough. My eyes would get red just from playing the entire day, staring at the screen. And
What do
I
you feel like
failed.
you're what do you feel like you were doing during that?
I was
Were
in this place because I was tired of all this healing and this God and everything in my teenage
a lot of
rebellion.
pressure, sure.
Yeah, and people's expectations about me being the healer's son was so much. So I was like, I'm not gonna do this. I'm gonna do my own thing. So that was part of the rebellion, that because of all this, because of all this over gaming, I don't know if that's a word, I failed my exams, and I was sent back to my native village, my mother's side, where there's an uncle who was so good at math and chemistry and physics that he had gotten a gold medal in a famous university.
Cool.
So my mother said, okay, you got to do this. There's going to be re-examinations in like 6 months or whatever. You have to pass. This is a matter of our family's honor. How can the son of a healer who's and my father was also teaching children how to study and all this. So I should have, and I was a really good student before then. Now
Yeah.
I was ranked number one in my
And then
class.
you're like, no, I'm done. Screw
Yeah,
all that.
yeah. So this is actually when my eyes reopened, because
That's so fun.
yeah, when
I'm
I, when
sorry.
I, yeah, my uncle, when he was teaching me math and, physics and chemistry, he was also reading a book. He was studying deeply a book called Viveka Chudamani by Adi Shankaracharya. The English name for this is The Crest Jewel of Discrimination Between the Truth and the Untruth, which
Mm,
which is um, where I understood, so much about this. So my uncle, he would read one paragraph or one line from it, and then he would look out into the open, and he would just sit there for an hour. And I was like, what is going on here? What the hell are you reading? Forget about math and science and whatnot. Just tell me what this book is about. So,
yeah.
because I was so interested, he started explaining to me some of the concepts from there. What
Mm,
is this world? See, so he asked me a question. So imagine, this entire world existed, but just this part, just your brain did not exist. Would it exist at all? What would you perceive? And
right.
that kind of stumped me so much. And then he talked about how everything is actually happening just here, right? Just
Mm,
in this space, everything is taking place. This was his way of explaining Maya, the sense of illusion of this world. And then he
mhm.
explained what is karma, what
So
is.
hold on.
Mhm,
When we talk about Maya in the sense of illusion, what about the things that like what about matter? Like this
mhm.
is clearly touch sensibly separate.
Yes,
Explain that.
yes. So whatever we can touch and feel, like this apple over here, it looks so
Yeah.
shiny, right?
Yeah.
And you can feel it, and it's like right here. It's just like undeniable that it exists.
Mm-hmm.
But what is the definition of existence? If something comes, a year ago this apple did not exist,
Mm-hmm.
and now it does. And a year later, even a few days later, it won't exist.
Mm-hmm.
It will transform into all sorts of different things, into fermented ground, whatnot, right? So if something appears and disappears, if something comes and goes, if something has a beginning, a middle, and an end, does it actually exist? So in non-dualistic thought, in Advaita Vedanta, in Jnana Yoga, which is the path of wisdom, the definition of for what exists, the definition of what is true, is something that does not change. Because everything else that comes and goes is like a dream. Like in a dream, you create an entire world, and you create all these characters, you create all the mountains, the rivers, all the situations that you're dreaming in, and you're just soundly sleeping in your bed, right? And then when you wake up, this entire beautiful world is gone. In a second, it disappears. So again, here, there's a beginning to that dream, there's a middle, and there's an end. So did it really exist? No, it's in the same way. What truly exists then? So, and also, scientifically speaking, if you go into quantum mechanics, for example, right? If you understand quantum physics, you understand that this apple or anything else, this microphone, this, statue of the Buddha here, everything, including our own bodies, is 99.999999999. It goes for like 16 more digits, I think, if I remember correctly. Empty space, completely empty space. And the 0.0000000, a few more zeros, 0.1% of the occupied space, the matter that actually seems to exist, the subatomic particles, neutrons, protons, and electrons, and quarks, and all these other fancy names they have for it, even they, when they look deeper into that, even they seem to be made out of 10-dimensional strings. This is called string theory. You can look it up.
Mm-hmm.
So even whatever is left out of this 99.99990 empty space, right? Even the particles that are made out of those little things are so, it's so hard to comprehend what that is. They call it a 10-dimensional string vibrating in 10 different dimensions at the same time. It's even hard to imagine that,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
what actually exists is what you conceive in your mind, right? We create this sense of things existing, and this is here as our dream. So that's why in Jnana Yoga, they say, just take this world to be a dream and be done with it, and go towards God.
Can you connect that idea to the concept of like the collective consciousness and what happens to somebody's spirit after they pass away?
Mm. So just like we have several dreams, one
Yeah.
night, the next night, the dream is different. We may have some continuation between that. But the collective consciousness is, we are in a way having a shared dream that we see a continuation between each other. But even going deeper into this, we think there are several different consciousnesses. That's why we call it collective consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Collective means, it's a collection of various different, you know, consciousnesses. But in reality, this idea that you are separate from me or from other people outside, that itself is again an illusion,
Mm-hmm.
because it is one consciousness that is experiencing all of this at once, multiple timelines converging seemingly to create this shared reality. It's just one dreamer dreaming it over and over again, infinite times. And I am meeting myself again and again. Everywhere I go, I meet myself. Everybody I talk to myself. Everything I eat myself. There is nobody else. There is nothing else. There is only God. There is
Interesting.
only you.
So then explain to me like the nature of the shadow and how that works in like people who are like being who are experiencing systemic like oppression and things like that, you know?
Mm, mm,
Because if it's like I know that there's not really a sense of control, but if we're all experiencing our paths, there is kind of this energy of manifestation and being able to create your reality intentionally. But
mm,
and I understand that like subconscious patterns create repetitive
mm,
experiences and generational trauma exists inside of the like the physical matter of the body. But
mm.
I still am curious if you can speak to the nature of like I guess suffering in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this is the process of self-discovery, right?
Mm,
We come here on this earth and then we are told, hey, you are this little boy who is like this. This is your name. These are your parents. You know, you look cute. You look that. You look, oh. And then in high school, you may get teased. And then somebody else may say something else about you. Gradually, what we do through this process, first, we accumulate and collect and own belief systems that become a part of our story.
mm,
This becomes our ego, and we completely believe this is who we are, right? And this ego, this sense of separation, is also full of grace and love. That is why it's there to have you protect yourself, try to do the best for yourself, for your loved ones, right? It comes with the most loving intention. But because it's not true, it's misaligned with actually what is real, there are things that happen where the ego is really with the best intention trying to take care of itself and the others it loves, but it actually creates suffering. This is actually the dark night of the soul. After awakening, after my first awakening, it was so powerful that it shook this entire worldview I had and turned
mm,
it upside down and broke it all into pieces. And I was there, didn't know what to do. I was left alone in the dark because everything I knew to be true, all since my childhood, all these belief systems I had gathered that helped me deal with the world were taken away from me. And now I was left there without the ability to actually function. I
mm,
had I left everything, my job, with the photography, with the acting. My projects were just couldn't complete anything, so I just lived in that place where it happened and slowly integrated that. So
mm,
the shadow is actually the one who began as your caretaker. Mm,
mm. Wow, I
mm,
understand that.
mm, mm. And
And would you say that like that aspect mimics like where does the shadow gain its personality?
it's from the training that it has received, right?
Yeah.
So um, in in my integrated awakening process, one of the modules that I have is called embracing your aspects into the light.
Mm,
And this process is really all about connecting with an aspect of this shadow and seeing where it actually comes from.
mm.
If you really
How
look,
does someone do that?
hmm,
How do they like connect with an aspect of the shadow?
because it is your aspect, it
Mm-hmm.
is who you are, but you have fragmented yourself
Mm-hmm.
because you have judged an aspect of yourself, right? For example, like whenever you're trying to make a decision, you're like, should I eat this? Should I not? There are two things that are telling you in your mind, like, oh, um, I'm hungry. I want to eat it. But then another voice says, no, you shouldn't eat it because you'll spoil your hunger. Or even something much bigger when it comes to relationships, when it comes to bigger decisions about taking a job or, making anything of a big shift in your life. There are so many voices in our mind on both sides. And there are so many perspectives. And each of these began with wanting to take care of you, wanting to lovingly help you. But because you have judged them, because you're like, no, this. So we become more and more fragmented. But there is a way you can invite these fragments back into the being, the light of who you are, and embrace them lovingly, forgiving them, helping them be seen. Most of them are so hurt because they came with the best intention to help you, and they were, pushed away. They were, suppressed and put into this dark place where they had to hide. And that's what they did. That's why they look like little monsters sometimes, because they have hidden in the dark for so long.
Can
And
you talk about how people can, a lot of the times when we are experiencing like a surge of the shadow, people lean into escapism methods, like diving into video games or diving into whatever it is that people
yeah.
may use to like avoid. How do you break out of that avoidance and really invite the alchemization process to happen?
Yeah. First of all, to understand and see that everything comes from love.
Mm-hmm. Everything
Everything
love.
is love, really. Even things which have slowly changed and, you know, transformed into hateful, fearful things began as pure love. It's our limited perspective where we judge in a pushy way these things, and we push them away, and they are in the dark and they crystallize into different forms. That's where this transformation happens into a shadow. But if you still recognize that essence of the shadow as light,
Mm.
if you take your time to bring that shadow up in your mind and help it see itself as love.
Mm.
So in this process, I guide people through how to communicate with your own shadows, how to talk to them, how to lovingly help them open up. And you open up to them, they open up to you, and then there can be a unification.
Mm.
But until that happens, they will still stay and kind of try to get your attention, try to get resolved, try to,
Until they're brought back into the frequency of love.
yes, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I know we are going on so many different tangents, but it's so
It's
beautiful because
perfect. I
these
feel like we're
questions you're
giving
asking
people,
are great.
thank you. I feel like we're giving people really practical ways to like lean into that experience, right?
Mm,
Because
mm,
it's like, if there's something that you feel like is holding you down, I feel it like physically in my body when I'm experiencing that sort of energy. Um, that's kind of the time when you are, when your body and your soul and whatever it is asking you to like really sit in and center with yourself and allow that feeling and expression to be fully moved through. And I think that the hardest part is that forgiveness and bringing it back all the way into love, because it means that like your ego has to like let go of whatever it is that it's holding on to in order to like continue that suffering. And I'm also wondering if you can like grow, but like, or well, I guess you can grow with, you need the friction. Like the friction is very necessary.
Yeah.
And I understand that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is like this all comes back to your process of self-discovery, right? So
Yeah.
we identify ourselves with different aspects in different areas of our lives through different time periods. We are more strongly that one aspect and not. For me as an actor, so you were asking earlier how I became an actor from this, but I went so deep into deciding that spirituality is my life, and everything I do, I want to do something that helps me with spirituality. So I was studying psychology because I wanted to understand myself. I was like, my father said, you have to get a degree of some kind. I don't care what, but it's important for you to get some education. So I was like, okay, if I could do anything, I would learn philosophy or psychology. And there were no philosophy, schools that I liked nearby. And so I said, okay, I want to learn psychology. So um, when I learned psychology, that's when I got into acting because we had um, intercollegiate competitions where they had this, you know, like different colleges meet and you have all sorts of different things you do. And there was a skit one time. There was a skit competition, and I was like, okay, why don't I just design something? It's interesting, it's creative to do that. And I acted in roles which were like which had a lot of acting in them. Like I did multiple personality disorder and somebody having schizophrenia and all that. And when I did that, I got so much out of that as a spiritual experience unexpectedly,
Mm-hmm.
because I realized I was acting out an aspect that
Mm-hmm.
was the essence of it was within me. So when I was doing multiple personality disorder, I was giving voice to different aspects within me.
Mm-hmm.
And that fascinated me so much. And people also seemed to enjoy my acting so much. They were like, you're a natural, you should do this more. So my ego loved that. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm going to be an actor. And because there was this spiritual dimension to it, I did it more and more. And eventually I started acting in movies as a lead character. I was the hero in these movies. And
What movie?
oh, there are so many. One of them is on YouTube. You can watch the full movie. I look completely different without my beard. My hair was short, so I was in my early 20s. So this experience of acting also showed me. So I was doing multiple projects. I was also acting in short films and
Do you
advertisements.
feel like you like were very connected to your core, or was it hard to maintain like a sense of self being so open to embodying all those different archetypes?
Yeah, so this is what showed me that I am none of these.
Mm.
This is what showed me that I am playing all these roles, but the more I did it, there were times when I was trying to like become that in the process of acting, but then I
Mm-hmm.
had the next project where I had to become completely something else. And then in the play, I was doing something else. So then I realized I am the same
Mm-hmm.
spiritually, right? I am playing all these different roles in my life. But what happens when you believe you are that role? What happens if you're an actor where you go so deep into that acting, which has happened to some method actors, right? Who went into the role for like years to prepare for it and they couldn't come out of that role for,
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. They faced a lot of problems. So I realized I was doing that. I was stuck to my role and forgetting who I truly am. This is what happens. And
Mm-hmm.
acting gave me this insight. And I was also doing photography at that time. And photography was my way of finding beauty in everything, understanding that there is innate beauty no matter where you look. You just have to
Mm-hmm.
look from the right perspective, and then you'll find beauty in it. So, this was part of my spiritual practice as karma yoga. Karma yoga is the path of action, the path where you use your actions in the world, you use your livelihood as a way of realizing who you are.
Mm-hmm.
But
And where does that lead you?
hmm,
Where does that lead you? Like what happened after you stopped acting?
um, I only stopped acting when this series of awakenings happened in 2014-15, which were
Mm-hmm.
so strong that I was saying it just shook up my world and I could
Yeah.
not function anymore. I had to drop my movie projects that were in progress. And I was doing a big photography project. And I went back to Bangalore and I
Mm-hmm.
had to, it was so sad that I had taken this money from them. I just couldn't do it. I broke down in front of
Mm-hmm.
my client, who was also a friend. And I said, I'm so sorry. I just can't do this. I just couldn't function anymore for so long. I had to slowly integrate this awakening I had and learn to again function in this world from a fresh set of eyes.
If you
So,
don't mind me asking, I'm wondering, I had read in your bio that you had worked through hopelessness. And I'm
mm,
assuming that that was like part of this awakening process. And what drove you to the point of that? And then how did you bring yourself out of that?
yeah, the acting journey, when it took me to a place where I was about to be famous, at least in my mind, my posters of my movie, larger than life, with my face on them, were on the walls in our city. And, it was about to release, and, people, and when it did come out, I watched it with my friends, and it was just a surreal experience seeing yourself on the silver screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the same
Imagine.
time, it was just like I was leading a double life inside. Inside, I felt so different. I felt all this was like so temporary. I didn't even know if I wanted to be famous. I didn't even know if I really wanted to be this actor. I only got into it originally from my self discovery, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was this sense of hopelessness, meaninglessness, this sense that nobody really got me. Because even though I was like the life of the party with my friends, I was like the popular guy who everybody liked and who was like, carrying the conversation, helping people to smile. I was that externally, but inside, I just didn't really know what this was all for.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't get out of my house so much because I just didn't want to get judged. In my mind, I felt like whenever I appeared in front of others, they immediately saw me like, oh, this is the actor. And if I was not matching their perception, like if I was not wearing nice clothes, if my hair was not always perfect, I was immediately judged. So I started feeling more and more isolated. I wouldn't get out of my house for days at a time. Actually, when this went into the depth of my depression, the dark night of the soul, what happened was There was a time when 4 days continuously, I didn't eat, I didn't drink even water. I didn't get out of my bed, not even the bedroom, because I just felt so, nothing mattered. Why should I even drink water? Why should I even survive?
Mm.
So this is when I actually had to surrender everything.
Mm.
This is when no concept, no meaning that I could give myself meant anything, because I saw through all of that as this is just another concept. This is
Mm.
just another story I'm telling myself, which is not really true. And that was part of my awakening. This was just, this was before the 2014, 15, when I went much deeper. But even after those series of awakenings, um, I had bouts of dark night of the soul every now and then, because it even more shook up my life, right? So I went through years of these difficulties, which actually later I found that this is what really helped me relate with people who are doing it right now, who are in the dark night of the soul right now, or who are having a huge disruption in their life because of their awakening. Whenever a student says, this is happening, that is happening, I'm like, it happened to me too. I know exactly what you're going through. It
Mm.
sounds like cliche now because I've said it so much, but I have lived through this in so many ways.
Do you feel like, I want to ask the right question. That was so good. When people are exploring what comes next for them, like,
Mm.
and they're getting out of that period of the dark night of the soul, how do they like reemerge into their power? How do they like claim that in their in themselves?
Yeah, yeah. First, before they are able to get out, they have to understand and see where they are stuck.
Mm.
After seeing my own patterns through years of being stuck in different pitfalls, and after seeing this in thousands of people that I've worked with at different capacities, I see the same exact pattern. It's, first of all, the biggest thing that holds people back, that held, you know, my progress back for so long. It's nothing other than myself. It is self sabotage. This is the
Mhm.
biggest thing that happens, because the ego, which believes it has to take care of itself in all these ways, what it does is actually creates all this trouble inadvertently. Because when you're waking up, it's the unknown that is opening its door to you.
Mm.
All of life's mysteries are right in front of you. And it's so bright and powerful that the ego thinks it's too much. It's like, oh
Mhm.
God, I want to hide from this light. Now
Yeah.
I just go into this little cocoon, and I want to just protect myself from all this mystery outside of me. So
Yeah.
what it does is it starts closing itself off and judges life, judges divinity, judges God, everything. And
Mm.
it creates this situation which is known as the dark night of the soul for itself, right? So until you realize it's self sabotage, you will keep doing it because you're just trying to take care of yourself.
Mm.
But that doesn't work. This is the time to surrender to the mystery, surrender to the Divine Mother, as I would say, surrender
Mm.
to life, which is here calling you to wake up.
Mm.
So, the very first pitfall when self sabotage happens It's important to surrender all your fears, doubts. Notice where you are holding yourself back, letting go of those limiting beliefs.
Right.
And the second biggest pitfall is that lack of clarity. Mm.
Hold on. I want to talk a little bit more about letting go of a limiting belief because I
Mhm.
think that people get told to do that a lot without actually being told how to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Limiting beliefs are so sometimes ingrained in us because we have trained them since our childhoods that they can be hard to see, right? But you can go into a place in yourself where you go to the essence of them and unlock something there where you can start releasing it, and then you do the external work. In through this process, the way I lead my students through this process is I have multiple tools, including a spreadsheet where people catalog all their beliefs that and see how much power they are giving away to that belief. So
Mhm.
we may feel powerless only because we have given our power away,
Mhm.
right? So you actually consciously catalog where is your power, where has it been given away to all these limiting beliefs, etc. And then there is an exercise of taking your power back. And I do guided meditations, right? I don't just give formulas and say and spreadsheets and say do this. My way is to carry somebody who's going through this process energetically through this, give them the right guidance through my words, but more importantly, through an energetic safe space that I create and hold for them. So
Mm.
through this exercise, they have that support, and otherwise it can be hard for them to do it by themselves, right?
Do
If
you
it was, Mhm.
consciously create that energy field for your students? Like, what does that process of creating that safe space look like? Or is it just something that you naturally emit?
So I have been a healer since my childhood, right?
Mhm.
And I used to lie. I used to lead these guided meditations at my father's clinic when he did healing. And when I started doing it by myself, holding energy as a group, it's a practice that somehow came really natural to me because I've been doing it for so long. But I applied it from holding a healing space for the body, for things, whatever people came for. And I used the same principles to hold that energy for them to look inward
Mm.
in a easier, safer way where they can let things come up without feeling unsafe
Mm.
and be able to address them. So in a way, and also I learned in Buddhist mysticism, there are ways that a teacher can transmit their awareness to you, right? It's
Mm.
it's called transmission teachings, and you may have heard of the Dalai Lama doing this and other teachers doing this. But what happens actually is the teacher goes into that awareness themselves, and then through using Kundalini energy and you know the way of showing that awareness to others through this transmission, the students receive that awareness that cannot really be put into words. You can
Mm.
explain it all you want, but it's so abstract that you cannot really convey that. But
Mm.
because we are one, because there is actually no separation between me, my students, or anybody for that matter, there is a way to access your consciousness and show you what I'm talking about.
Can we
And
do that for the audience?
oh my God, I've not done this ever on a podcast. I've done this so many times on my um
We don't have to if you don't want to try, but I think it would be
so
really cool if we
there are
could.
several considerations for this. I'm happy to try it. But usually the most important thing here is somebody who comes as a student, they must be willing to receive.
Mm,
They must have in some way consciously agreed to be there
yeah.
and receive that gift, because this gift cannot be given when it's not right to give,
Mm,
right? And then it would be like Jesus said, pearls before swine, because
mm,
it's something really precious when somebody is not at a place that they're actually interested. Because there are so many people, like I didn't care for any of this when I just wanted to be a professional gamer at that one point,
mm,
right? So if I was presented this jewel in front of me, I wouldn't have seen its value,
mm,
right? And at that time, when it's the value of it is not seen, it's not appreciated, it's actually, it can be harmful to give something to people who are not in a place to receive it, because people will
mm,
actually judge it. People will actually even react in a negative way to it. So that's the reason I only do this with my students who are consciously there and receptive to it. So I have done many guided meditations, etc. Like it on my YouTube channel, you might be able to find an older guided meditation, but they're years old. So like as I progress on my spiritual journey, they have evolved so much and the energy of it has evolved so much. But you can
mm.
find an older example on my YouTube if you're interested.
Absolutely. I will post the links in the description. That is a really, really beautiful point. And I think
Mm,
that that's really valuable. And I think that um, it evokes this idea of really taking your own inner wisdom and your journey very like sacredly and putting time and intention to continue to lean into it, right? And to
mm,
expand your awareness and your knowledge so that you become like an energetic match to receiving these kind of deeper teachings.
yeah.
And that like by leaning into the impulses that you're feeling from like the light within you,
Mhm,
you'll get closer and closer to being able to truly understand, process, and access the kind of like
mhm.
transformational wisdom like is given in pieces along the journey. And I think that that's a really helpful
Yeah.
point because sometimes people can get in their heads about like
Mhm,
why they aren't experiencing certain things or if they can or if they can't or if they have to be born with it or not, and it's like no, the whole journey, your whole life has been leading you closer and closer to
mhm.
this wisdom. It's if you choose to pay attention and lean in, then the journey like begins to unfold in a whole new synchronistic way.
Yes, yes. I just remembered, um, I am going to be putting a guided meditation with, there's a teaching and then a guided meditation where I do something similar to this transmission. And I do it at multiple levels, right? In a group setting where I'm kind of teaching to beginner students, I do that kind of a, lower energy transmission. Somebody who's really ready, like for one person, when I did this, they went into this experience of samadhi where they could experience completely no mind for weeks at a time. They were in complete bliss. But that person was ready. They were yearning for that kind of an experience for so long and they were meditating for it. They couldn't do it by themselves. I just did a little nudge to help them go over that edge, right? And experience samadhi. But it cannot be done when somebody is not ready. So what I'm going to do is I have an app. It's available on the App Store iOS or Android, you
Mhm.
can um, I I can give you the link. You can put it in the show notes. But if you just search for Awaken with Ra, you will find that app. And in that
Mhm.
app, I already have a couple of guided meditations there. I'll be adding more as well. By the time you hear this episode, there will be more, and you'll be able to experience that over there.
That's so awesome. What a gift. Wow. Thank you. We've covered so much, and I feel like I've had a lot of epiphanies along the way. This has been a very, very enlivening conversation, so thank you. Is there anything that you're really wanting to convey to our listeners?
Yeah. Hmm. I had this question for myself.
Mm.
If there was one thing I could convey if the entire world was listening to me, what would that be? And assuming there are hmm, thousands of people, I don't know, maybe even millions who will listen to this at one point. Hopefully your show grows that like big. Hmm,
Thank you.
hmm. What I would say hmm, is, even this may not make sense to you. Just trust the energy of these words and receive these words into your heart, and then you will see in your own experience. But first, you have to open and receive. Hmm, hmm. You are a limitless being of light. Hmm. You are not separate from God. Hmm. You are truly divine right now, right here. Your true nature is already enlightenment. There is nothing stopping you from experiencing, realizing this blissful state of being in this moment, but yourself. Mm. Mm. Trust your true nature, trust your divinity, and open yourself up to receive the awakening that life wants you to experience. Get out of your own way and be open to receive all the help that you can. Mm. And nothing can really stop you from mm, enlightenment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Mm.
you so much. This conversation has been wonderful. If people want to connect with you and work with you, what would that look like? What are your offerings and where can they find you?
Yeah, they can start out by going to my website, awakenwithra.com. And on my website, I have a 2 hour long spiritual awakening masterclass,
Mm.
which goes into the details of what are these pitfalls that hold people back, why it happens, and then what can you do about it? What are the ways? I talk about the 3 pillars of integrated spiritual awakening. A lot of people start having an awakening like I did. They start questioning everything. They start seeing and realizing that life is very different from what normal is. But because they don't have the right guidance, clarity, because of the isolation that they feel when their family and friends judge them, they get stuck there, right? They don't progress on this path. Even when life has opened the doorway to enlightenment, which is spiritual awakening, that's how it begins. People don't go all the way. And people have all these misconceptions that if you want to be enlightened, you have to become a monk and you have to meditate in a cave for 100 years. It's not the case because it's already who you are right now. So I talk about how you can actually integrate your spiritual awakening and be a powerful human being functioning very well in the world. Like I was able to found software companies. I was a six-figure, computer programmer. I was able to, you know, do all these things that I couldn't even imagine doing. Right. And I've reinvented myself so many times to be able to do that. And you can too. You can be very balanced in this life. You don't need to be woo-woo about this. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all about being very grounded, yet very beautifully wise. Like, if a tree has to grow 100 feet, like these oaks and these redwood trees, they have to have really deep roots that keep them grounded. So my approach is about a balanced path to awakening. And I talk about this in the Spiritual Awakening Masterclass. People can, watch that there. And if that resonates with them, if they, want more help, then just that understanding. Because for me, the biggest gift in my awakening has been working with my mentors. And without them, I wouldn't be here. Without my teachers who really showed me the truth, I wouldn't be anywhere close. Because self-sabotage, right? We are working through the resistance we have ourselves. So when somebody is there to talk with you, help you see this, help you understand your true nature, and point out things to you that you cannot yourself see, that's the biggest gift. So I talk about the value of all this there. So if you want to work with somebody who has done it themselves, who has worked with thousands of people, hundreds of people in a more mentoring capacity, and brings that depth from multiple different paths they have walked. So if that would be valuable, people can join the wait list to work with me. And I'm I'm going to have group cohorts as well. That there's this joy in doing it together and supporting each other. So it's community based, community focused. That we will also start soon, depending on when you're listening to this. So
That's
join the
fun.
waitlist there, and you will come to know about the free events I hold, as well as the if there is a mentorship spot that opens up, you will also be able to sign up from there.
That is very wonderful, and I will have all of those links posted down below. And as always, if you're interested in connecting with me, joining my Inner Eye Initiation program, where I start to help you get familiar with your own energy and the process of embodying your power as well, you can find me on all of the links that I posted below as well. So thank you
That's
so
wonderful.
much for joining us today. Oh,
I
go ahead.
wanted to ask you about that. I'm sorry if I. Uh,
No, yeah,
can
yeah,
can
please.
you tell us a little bit about your program? You've asked me all these beautiful
Sure.
questions. So, what's your approach?
Absolutely. So, a lot of my journey has been in self-exploration as well, in figuring out um, how to connect in with nature, especially growing up in a paradigm that is very disconnected. So, it's been a lot about finding my connection to magic and to life inside of a lot of different places and settings where it's not necessarily being like nourished from the outside. So I had to kind of grow from the inside out in this way of working with my spirit guides and working with my different incarnations of myself and getting familiar with past lives. And so I help people really embrace this multiplicity of energy that they have. I have experience working with those fragmentations and being able to facilitate conversations between the shadow and the light so that people are able to truly understand what it is that's holding them back in the first place. I am a psychic tarot reader, and so I give people really grounded, practical advice on how they can regulate their nervous system and make the best choices to align them to their manifestations of their desires. And so, my mentorship program is a 10-week one on one program where I walk somebody through everything that they would need to know to have an effective, embodied, magical practice that makes them feel divine, that
Mm.
allows them to fully embrace their sovereignty over their choices
Mm.
and empowers them with different fun like rituals and tools and things like that that really helped me grow in my confidence and understanding of self and giving that back to other people.
Wow, that's wonderful.
It's very
Wow.
fun.
Yeah, yeah. Mm, mm. Wow,
Well,
this is,
thank you so much.
yeah, this has been beautiful. Thank you for having me on your podcast and for this beautiful conversation.
Absolutely. I look forward to staying connected in the future and following your work. I definitely am going to put my name on that wait list. I really, really resonated with your approach and am fascinated by um the presence of the like natural catalyst for gentle transformation that just swirled throughout this conversation. I love that. And I'm excited to for the ripple effects that this will have in people's lives. And I'm really grateful to have met you. And thank you for being on my show.
Thank you. And namaste. Mm, mm.
Have a great day.